Morning, everyone, and welcome to our Sacred Sunday conversation. So let's take a deep breath in together and arrive fully and completely right here, right now. Last week, we talked about having a spiritual practice for our emotions, a spiritual practice around feeling and around emoting so that we can care for ourselves, so that we can meet our world consciously. Today, our conversation is about a spiritual practice around self-care and self-prayer. Self-care and self-prayer. Do either of those things bring anything up for you when you hear it? When you hear the word self-care, what do you feel? When you hear the word self-prayer, what do you feel? What do you hear? We have a lot of ideas that may be inherited around the concepts of self-care and self-prayer. I was recently on a Zoom call meeting and I got permission to share this story, but we were all getting ready to have the meeting and checking in and doing our little hellos, and someone arrived when they could get there, and it was a little later than the others. And so this beloved, as was welcoming the one who was coming into the call, said, and this call was about 6:30 at night. And the beloved said to them, "Oh, good, you're here, you're here. Were you just having lunch?" And then they corrected it and said, "I mean breakfast?" And it was 6 p.m. The words that beloved was looking for were dinner. Were you just having dinner? Self-care. Are we getting enough sleep? Are we slow enough inside? Are we fully taking care of ourselves? Or do we need a little more space, a little more time, and a little more practice around self-care? Have you found yourself in that place lately that you might be saying, have you had breakfast at 6:30? You may be finding that your brain has been a little bit of scrambled eggs here and there, and you may be mixing things up, or you may be not necessarily rushing around, but having a rushing inside. And it may be time to check in and slow down and see what your practice is around self-care and self-prayer. No doubt our routines of decompression have changed. Recently, within the last couple of years, I became a mother. When you become a mother, everything is disrupted, divinely disrupted, just like there is a lot of disruption going on in our world today. But one thing that is important to notice is that when there is disruption, we need to create new patterns and habits. So for me, decompression has often been taking a hike, going camping, sneaking into a movie, even if it's by myself, just taking a movie day to relax. There are a lot of things that I used to do to decompress. Going to see live music. Well, live music happens at bars and it happens at night. And it's not the best place to take a toddler. I don't know that everyone appreciates it, and I don't know that the toddler appreciates live music at night. And I did for a little while do some sneaking into the movies when it was really, nap time could handle a movie. But, now it's not really a time that you can sneak into a movie with a little one unless you want them seeing it, which I don't. And anyway, I'm not going to the movies. Are you right now? Probably not going to the movies. And then some of the other things, like, even a long hike is different, because I got to be ready to carry a pack with me that has a little one in it if I'm going to go on a long hike, right? So no doubt things have changed. Things changed before the current change, but things are always changing, right? Maybe you care for someone that you didn't care for before, and your habits and your patterns have to change with that. If we don't take a conscious step to put in new systems and to rediscover ourselves, rediscover what nourishes us and what helps us decompress, then we will find ourselves in an interesting state of mind, will we not? So have you given yourself time, given these new circumstances, given this new current condition, to really look into how your self-care has been disrupted? How has your decompression been disrupted? Now, some of our modes for decompression have to do with unhealthy things. We're not necessarily looking at those, though if they've been disrupted, good, because it's a great time to put in practices that nourish us. But many of us are caring for others, supporting others in a different way that we have never had before. Many of us are having experiences that we've never had before. There are heightened experiences of people experiencing depression, thoughts of suicide, anxiety, high levels of need around discernment and wisdom. You know, I was just talking with a parent the other day, and the decisions that parents need to make right now, right? They have to make decisions they've never had to make before. This parent that I was talking to said that they finally came to a decision around school and whether they were going to send their little ones back to school. And they decided that consistency for these little ones was the most important thing. So rather than sending them back and having more disruption at a time there's already disruption, they were going to go the virtual learning route so that they could create consistency that these little ones could count on. Does that make sense? Like the idea that you know what to expect now and you're going to get all prepared, right? You're going to get all ready, and then you get started, and then a week later, nope, you're not going there anymore. You're not doing this anymore. Our world is experiencing disruption. What can we do that's like what that parent did to create consistency? We have decisions around care. We have decisions around connection. We have decisions around parenting, around all of the experiences that we have. And the need for discernment, the need for coming from a place of center, coming from a place of presence and practice and peace is more important than ever right now. All of these things are best addressed by an individual who engages in self-care and self-prayer. When we engage in that aspect of our lives, we equip ourselves to make the best decisions we can. We also allow ourselves to show up in the highest way for others around us. You know, I was thinking about the idea of parents and divorce, and in another conversation that I was having, a couple of conversations this last week, it came up, the disruption that happens when parents separate or get a divorce, right? And the environment that it can create for children, and how those effects can impact the children even as time goes by. And wouldn't it be a gift if, like in It's a Wonderful Life, or, you know, one of those Oh God movies where you get to kind of see what would have happened if, what would have happened if. What if every time there was a major disruption, call it whatever one that's going on for you right now, your biggest major disruption, whether it's internal, whether it's the global one, whatever it is, whether it's with a family member, or whether it's this idea of tracing a family system through a divorce or a separation or a trauma. Imagine if, like in the movies, you could see what would happen and how everyone would be impacted if you took this route. Now, how would everyone be impacted if you took this route? Now, how would everyone be impacted if you took this route? I think if we were able to set up a system where people could see that, or even an amazing film that would ground people in the impact, I think so many people would stop. They would stop and say, I want this result, and I want the highest probability that this result will be able to demonstrate itself. Therefore, I will backtrack to this moment, and I will create conscious systems of self-care and self-prayer. Because I have an intention. And in this moment, that intention is so strong that I am willing to fast forward and to look at the results I want and step into the action right here and right now that aligns with those results. So often we don't do that. We fail to put on our oxygen mask first. And ironically, sometimes we do it out of guilt. We do it out of guilt because we think if I take care of myself, if I take time for myself, if I have to practice for myself, then somehow everyone else isn't getting enough of me. When in fact, when we don't do it, what they're getting enough of and more than enough of is the me I don't want to give them. It's the me that I'd rather leave in a halo of meditation with myself and the divine. I'd rather just lift that up and say, sweet spirit of life, love, wholeness, and truth, do what you will with this, but align me with my intentions in this moment so that I may impact myself, my world, my family, and others according to my heart's highest and deepest desire. Please be in me the power and the strength that my weaknesses may not ricochet into my world as a magnetic vibrational field that draws to it the same dysfunction, the same discontent, or the same disorder. I will put on my oxygen mask first. Will you? Can we step out of the shame and the guilt around self-care, recognizing that when we step into it consciously, we shift outer circumstances from the inside out. We cannot shift them as easily later by fixing them. But when we fill ourselves up in spirit, when we are centered, we make different decisions. Don't we think about the decisions that you make when you haven't had enough sleep, when you haven't decompressed, when you haven't nourished your spirit or your soul? Think about a conversation when you're drained, when you are on the edge. Friends, we will either eat each other up or we will drink from the living water. We will either eat each other up or we will drink from the living water. It is an illusion to think that we cannot fill ourselves with a spiritual practice and keep filling the world around us with light. So, how can we make this spiritual practice real for each one of us? One of the first things I think we need to do is ask ourselves the question, is there anything around self-care or self-prayer, such as guilt, shame, or blame? Is there any energy around there? Was I taught in any way like, oh, you really shouldn't pray for yourself? That's selfish. It's selfish to pray for yourself. It's selfish to take time for meditation when there are things that need to be done or people that need your attention. It's selfish to consciously check in and check out. Is there anything that you inherited around taking care of yourself that might be in the way, that you might be ready to release today in order to put on your oxygen mask first and create a different reality down the road? Maybe there's nothing that you inherited, but maybe it wasn't modeled. Was it modeled for you? Was self-care and self-prayer, were they modeled? Were they visible? Were you able to really see in your life up to this moment how those around you decompress in a healthy way. We can probably bring to mind all of the unhealthy ways people around us decompress. They may have done it by exploding and shouting. They may have done it by whatever addictions that we do. They may have done it with whatever obsessions that we do, but have we seen it consciously modeled? Ernest Holmes, the founder of religious science or Centers for Spiritual Living, talked about our divine right for each of us to have emancipation from discord. Emancipation from discord. Are we willing to give this gift to ourselves? Because when we do, we give it to everyone else. So can we shelf the idea that it is selfish to give to ourselves? You know, I recently taught a prosperity course, and I had incredible master teachers with me in this course, and I wanted it to be different. I love the moments where an experience and a course is different than it's ever been, where you get something new, fresh, authentic. And one of the things that came up, and it was in Reverend Ken's presentation, Reverend Ken Gordon, the former head of CSL, was this idea around our finances. And of course, he talked about tithing and 10% to where you're spiritually nourished and what that means. And he also talked about creating debt and how not to create debt energetically, vibrationally, practically. He said he only gives now. He only gives. He doesn't do things. If there are strings tied to it, he doesn't do it because it creates debt. So whether we're talking about our forgiveness work, whether we're talking about our finances, or whether we're talking about our consciousness and our attachments, letting go of debt. But the other thing that he shared struck everyone in the group. And I was amazed at how it kept coming back. It kept weaving itself back into conversations. And it really was, I think, the thing that touched the most people as far as giving them a shift in their practice. And he said that with your finances, look at paying yourself. And look at paying yourself first. Tithe first, and then the next 10%, pay yourself. Put it in an account, put it aside, but reserve 10% for yourself. And this practice was one that struck so many people. Like, can I do that? Do I have 10% to do that with? And is it okay? Am I worth it? Am I worthy of it? Is that all right? And it is the practice that stood out to people. I was surprised at how much it stood out to people. Now, probably for a lot of people, they spend 10% on themselves anyway. Some might spend more, you know, on just a variety of things that have to do with self-care, life, shopping. But what happens when we make it conscious? What happens when we set it aside? The whole energy around using it changes. I use it because I know I set it aside because I'm worth it. I'm not using it, and every time I use it, I'm not feeling bad. Am I spending too much on myself or my life? Am I being indulgent? Am I this? Do you see that? Do you feel that energy around using it? How it's, money is just energy. It's not a thing aside from that. It is energy in motion. It's where I put my work and what I receive from my work. It's what I want to prosper and what I want to create. It's what I circulate. And all of that, the energy around it is the most critical. But when we set it aside consciously and we utilize it consciously, it comes from a different space. We use it remembering that we set it aside to be used because we're worth it, because we want to be conscious around it. We want to be creative around it. We don't just want it to fly out and not notice it. We don't want it to leave the house undedicated, without purpose, without consciousness. So can we do that around self-care and around self-prayer? You know, recently, my little one has started, anytime something's kind of like going wrong, like there's a little accident or something, or sometimes it's a self-created accident, like I'm gonna pour water on the floor and then I'm gonna do something. But usually it's around like, something breaks or something drops or something happens. And she started saying something when these things happen. Do you want to guess what she says? Think about all the possibilities of what she could say when something happens and you go, oh. She says, Jesus. Jesus. And it's just started recently. But you know what that means, right? You know what that means. And I said to her when I heard her say it, I said, well, that's a good name to call on when things go funny, when things go wrong, or when things are interesting. That's a good name to call on. Are we willing to call on the high and holy names when things go wrong and before they go wrong? Are we willing to engage in prayer, a prayer practice for ourselves, knowing that when we are prayed up, so is the world around us. If the world within us is prayed up, it is to the benefit of everyone. How many of us would love for the people around us to be prayed up, to be fully prayed up, to have engaged in self-care to a degree that they show up in the communal experience as centered, balanced, grounded, emotionally regulated, considerate, kind, conscious, powerful, intentional, resourceful, prayerful. When we engage in self-prayer, we are simply conditioning ourselves to have God thoughts. We are saying, let this mind and let this body temple be in alignment with the Most High. Raise my thinking, raise my feeling, raise my action, so that I may be an expression of the Most High to the highest degree in this moment that I am capable. When we engage in self-prayer, we are developing the Christ. We are exercising our divine authority to raise our awareness. It's not about begging for something to happen. It's about becoming the way, getting so fully in the way that we become the way. If we want to turn chaotic disaster into visible peace, we start by becoming the way. Eric Butterworth says in Celebrate Yourself, he says, unless you want to perpetuate the conditions around you, you must change your thoughts about them. Ask yourself, am I part of the solution to the problems around me, or am I part of the problem? If you react with anger or bitterness or fear, you are projecting negative vibrations, and thus you are part of the problem. He goes on to say, Jesus said, let your light shine. One with positive vibrations of light emanating from him can walk into a room and his presence is immediately felt as a harmonizing influence. So in moments where we recognize that our need for self-care and self-prayer is up, can we hear the knock at the door? Can we make a commitment of time and of practice and dedicate it to our own self-worth, our divine worth, And when it feels like there's chaos or disorder, or where it feels like we don't have a practice enough, can we have the presence of mind to say, Jesus, and become the way? Namaste, friends.